There was a marvelous article that I saw in the dentist's office, where you always read quickly and short articles, about the universal sound of the child. And there has been some work in coding or recording the sound pattern of infants, almost the same work as they're doing with dolphins, to see if there isn't a universal language that comes in the sounding of a child. It seems to me absolutely extraordinary, if you think about it a moment, remember here in a moment, the quality of a child's voice, that little tiny body with a voice volume, that's huge, huge volume, a volume that we rarely use again, unless we're doing opera, rarely. And not only volume, but range, the tonal range of a child's voice. If you listen to it, and the inventiveness, the high pitch and the low pitch, it's tremendous capacity to sound. And when you think about that, and think about how even my voice sounds right now, within a narrow range, certain language pattern, it's very small in relationship to that great capacity that we come in with. And then the question is, what are the consequences of that? For me, that's one of the subtle rocks. The sense of taking for granted that this is the only capacity my voice has, forgetting all that range, all a sense of volume, all a sense of a scale that I had at birth. And this, for me, is one of the most exciting areas that we have a chance to look at now, is how can we take those rocks out of the road? How can we begin to expand back to our original capacities again, our original abilities to relate to life in the fullest sense that belongs to us by nature? There's another beautiful film that suddenly comes to mind of children at first day of life, newborns, done by Ohio State, some of the physicians there. And what they did was to look at these very small children and watch them move in relationship to their mother speaking to them. And the mother was saying something relatively simple, like, "Aren't you a pretty baby?" And she would say it over and over again. And as she did, the child would move in absolutely choreographed movements to that sound. And what they did was slow that down, slow the mother's voice down to the pattern of that sound. And the movements to the pattern of the movement, they were absolutely in similar pattern. Now that said something to me almost overwhelming in terms of its reality. As we speak ourselves out, and this new child comes in to life, imprinted by how we speak to it, in very often the narrow range that we have of speaking, their movements then eventually become also restricted. And if we could imagine ourselves sounding to the child as he sounds in full expansion of sound, just imagine what the movements could be like. Full, excited, full range, full volume, movement of the body. What extraordinary dancers we would have by nature if we would move closer and closer to our own full expression of the capacities that we have lost by this narrowing down. The adaptation to a particular form, a particular pattern, which is ours. And every culture has had a pattern. Every culture does develop one. Mostly adaptation to survival to begin with, certain ritual forms, certain kind of collective forms. And the problem that we have as adults, and the problem that we then give to our children as inheritance, is that these patterns are taken for granted as the true reality. This is what life is. And so children, being imitative, since this is the way they learn, will imitate the parent, will imitate the father, the mother, the aunts, the uncles, the teachers, and they will begin to narrow their experience into these adaptive patterns without recognizing, because we don't recognize, that they're only a narrow, narrow part of the full spectrum that is human life. Then, however, there is in us the rebellion. There's that deep urge in us, which I mentioned earlier, to experience the totality, which is more than just a memory of how it is when we came. That totality is always there. It's always there, that sense of who we are as a total being. And that larger total being, the self, will complain after a certain point. It hurts, it's too narrow, it's too small, ouch. I need to push out of it. Now, how that pushing out occurs depends very often upon the kind of child, kind of adult we are. Sometimes it occurs in painful ways, again, in the body, in the psyche, in ways I've mentioned, in problems in learning. There is another way, and there's another way that belongs to us, again, by nature, and that is to use that push out of that narrow box, the box that we have lived ourselves in and is too small and that hurts after a certain point because we can't fit into it anymore. And that is to create, to begin to create a larger environment for ourselves to live in. And I believe, I know now from the numbers of time I've been shown that in my life, in lives of friends, in lives of the children that I've known intimately, that desire of the self, the desire to heal or to make wholer than we were before, is so strong that it's almost its prime intention. That is, how can I help you, you child, you adult, you culture, you educational system, which has served its purpose for a while but is now too narrow. How can I make you grow? How can I make you change? How can I make you bigger so that you can function more for the totality? I feel that it's the energy of that self or larger being that we are is so enormous in its intent to create that for us, that if given an opportunity, it will do that in the most creative way.